1991. I came seeking sacred ground, but I found silenced stories. I came to trace the footsteps of the Christ, but I couldn't ignore the boots of the soldier. They told me this was the Holy Land, but I saw stolen homes and segregated streets. They said this was about faith, but what I saw was fear curated into a tour. Children with stones called terrorists, settlers with guns called defenders. And Isaiah started preaching in my bones, woe to those who add house to house, who join field to field, till no space is left and you live alone in the land. This is not just about Israel. This is about empire. This is about blood built into foundations. This is about what happens when silence becomes the price of entry. And today, God is calling us to tear down what was built on blood and build again. 1991, I was invited to join a Holy Land tour sponsored by the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles. Our guide was Rabbi Harvey Fields, a warm and learned man whose patience and clarity made the journey smooth and made it clear. The Federation had gathered 15 clergy from Southern California for this interfaith pilgrimage designed to build solidarity between Jewish and Christian leaders. There were two of us from Santa Barbara in a group that represented a cross-section of denominational diversity. And I got to tell you, the timing was extraordinary. We arrived in Israel just after Operation Solomon, the dramatic 1991 airlift that transported more than 14,000 Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa to Tel Aviv in 36 hours. Their arrival was celebrated as a modern miracle, but the miracle was also an emergency. Violence and political collapse in Ethiopia had made their situation perilous. But my first memory after deplaning our El Al flight, arriving at Ben Gurion Airport, was of hundreds of Russian Jews waiting in limbo. Now let me apologize. I apologize to Palestinians because I was so unaware, and I didn't even know that Tel Aviv was built on Palestinian villages. But Russian Jews were in the airport. Their resettlement had been delayed, and they were stuck there because of the airlift of Ethiopian Jews. And that consumed all the available resources. As our bus left the airport, heavily armed soldiers stood on every corner. Now, until then, I had been unaware of how military presence was woven into daily life, and the normalization of fear was jarring. Even before we visited any sacred sites, the land itself felt watchful. It felt suspicious, on edge. It was a few days later that our itinerary shifted unexpectedly because we were told we would visit a Falasha absorption camp, one of the transitional centers for Ethiopian Jews. When our bus doors opened, hundreds of somber-looking Ethiopian boys surrounded me, clearly drawn by my darker skin. They were Hebrew in faith, African in ancestry, outsiders in the land that claimed them. I didn't have the language then to articulate it, but I was witnessing a hierarchy within homecoming. Later that week, I was in East Jerusalem, and I was walking through an open-air market when I heard a huge explosion. I ran toward the sound to see a bus in flames, killing and injuring civilians. I heard screaming. Chaos unfolded quickly, shouting, and there were security cordons. During this trip, we visited the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Via Dolorosa, the Temple Mount. I sat on a camel on the Mount of Olives. We visited a Holocaust memorial. I planted a tree in my parents' name at the MLK forest, and I apologize. I did not realize that the reason that we planted pine trees is because they were European, and the indigenous olive trees and oak trees were gone. There had been deforestation to dishonor the Palestinians. In Galilee, we traced Jesus' steps through Nazareth. We crossed the Sea of Galilee by boat, visited the Baha'i Gardens, a rare testament to universalism in a land carved by boundaries, and then the Dead Sea, and we ascended Masada. Looking back, I realized that our movement through these spaces was crafted, a narrative of endurance and triumph carefully arranged for foreign clergy. We were shown the evidence of survival, but not the cost of domination. At street level, another story unfolded. In a crowded neighborhood, I saw Palestinian children hurl stones at Israeli soldiers. The official narrative framed the kids as agitators, even threats. Decades later, I understand those stones in a different light, not acts of random rebellion, but primal expressions of dignity and visibility. To call it violence without naming the violence of occupation is to side with power. One evening, our hosts placed us on a kibbutz, part of Israel's collective agricultural tradition. Late that night, I heard music pulsing through the dark. From a distance, it sounded like Whitney Houston in Hebrew. A group of young Israeli soldiers were celebrating their completion of basic training, and they were dancing and laughing and getting drunk, and when they saw me, they waved me in. They were very welcoming. We also visited a Jewish school that employed a couple of Arab teachers. At the time, such arrangements were uncommon, but we were led to believe they were normal. Israel's education system was, and largely remains, segregated into Jewish and Arab tracks. At that school, the veil of propaganda, that is where the veil of propaganda truly began to lift for me. Because they interviewed some of the teachers, only the Jewish teachers. The Arabs were not, and I didn't know until much later that Palestinians were always referred to as Arabs, never as Palestinians. It took years of reflection, study, and listening, especially to Palestinian and Ethiopian voices, for me to discern the deeper story. I came to see how pilgrimage can become propaganda, how itineraries and silences serve to reinforce Israel's self-image as eternal victim and moral victor. When I reflect on those days in 1991, I no longer view myself as just a visitor. I was a witness in formation, one whose understanding of faith, justice, and history was being quietly dismantled and rebuilt. The Holy Land had offered both beauty and brutality, hospitality and exclusion. Only later did I realize the journey was less about geography than about awakening, learning to distinguish between reverence and romanticism, between memory and myth. Meanwhile, those who did not fit the preferred narrative, the Palestinian mother at a checkpoint, the Ethiopian child facing discrimination, the dissenting Israeli who questioned state violence, they were all rendered peripheral. Their suffering was not part of the tour. In the years that followed, I learned to look again. I read the histories buried beneath slogans. I listened to the testimonies of those erased. I began to recognize how theology and nationalism intertwine, how scripture can be wielded to sanctify power as easily as to challenge it. And then we all know about October 7th, 2023. But we saw genocide preparing to erupt long before it came to the world's headlines. The conditions were already in place. Apartheid, siege, impunity. What erupted on October 23rd was not just a conflict, it was culmination. And I said in 2023, as I say now, if this kind of cruelty can be excused and funded in Gaza, it can happen anywhere. Because Gaza is not just a place. Gaza is a signal. Gaza is a warning. Gaza is a mirror. The boots that press down in Rafah are not isolated from those that press down in Ferguson or Kingston or Port-au-Prince. New York's mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani said it. When you see the boot of the police, it's been laced by the IDF. Folks, around the world, the Israeli military has become a global supplier of security doctrine, exporting surveillance tools, occupation logic, and urban warfare tactics. Many U.S. and Western law enforcement departments train with the IDF. The militarization of everyday life in Israel has become an export industry, including the crime syndicate known as ICE. The results are visible. The transformation of community policing into counterinsurgency, the treating of entire neighborhoods, especially the minoritized and the poor, are seen as enemy territory. And you know what? I can see the through line from Israel to extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean, in places like Jamaica, Trinidad, and Haiti, where black bodies are brutalized under the guise of anti-crime operations. These killings, particularly of Venezuelan fishermen, often supported by U.S. and international security funds, reflect the same colonial logic: criminalize the poor, silence dissent, and call it peace. We cannot talk about state violence in Gaza without talking about the global war on blackness, the export of occupation, and the militarization of poverty. These are not isolated injustices. They are coordinated systems of control. To stay silent in the face of that is to become complicit. What does it mean to carry a Trump Bible in hand with a Charlie Kirk theology that tries to dehumanize black women while walking through streets soaked in silence and shadow? It means we must eventually ask what kind of God we worship when our theology aligns with domination. It means we must interrogate what kind of peace is possible without justice. Build that wall inspired by Israel. Where have we been seduced by the curated story? Where have we been confusing pilgrimage with propaganda, or education with propaganda, or vacation or entertainment with propaganda? Where have we watched violence and called it security? Where have we called evil good and good evil? Isaiah's warning is not just for them, it's for us. It is for clergy who bless bombs. It is for nations who fund injustice. It is for churches who pray for peace but refuse to name the power structures that make peace impossible. It's amazing how a heist at the Louvre or a theft at the British Museum becomes a news item, but not the fact that both locations are repositories of stolen goods. Let us not be tourists in the land of the oppressed. Let us be witnesses. Let us be truth tellers. Let us be builders of justice, not architects of ruin. So yes, we must tear down. Tear down the silence that covers injustice. Tear down the theology that blesses empire. Tear down the systems built on stolen land and spilled blood. But the promise of God does not leave us in the rubble. The ruins are not the end. They are the beginning. Because God is also calling us to build again. To build a house where every voice is heard. To build a land where no one is walled out or bombed in. To build a justice that doesn't skip the suffering. To build a peace that doesn't pretend that the pain didn't happen. We build again, not with denial, but with truth. We build again, not on blood, but on righteousness. We build again because the holy God will be proved holy by justice. And that's the work we're called to now. I'm going to ask you, if you would, to close your eyes and take a deep breath in. And now take in a little bit more air and slowly release it. And now place both hands over your heart. I think of the words of Rumi. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. We've all heard that love wins. We just need to open ourselves up to that love. Let me share Rumi again. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Now take another breath in, deeper, hold, slowly release. And now the hands that are over your heart, open them up. And in this, we open up our hearts to the love that surrounds us. Amen.
Pastor Moore, can I just thank you right now? I'm wondering, of that tour you went on in 1991, how many of those pastors are saying what you're saying right now with the understanding of what that really was? You know what I mean? It was just one more extension of, colonialism. It was one more extension of empire. You know what? And it was the painting of the picture we want to be seen. But how many went a little step further and said, that don't sit right with me? That just doesn't feel right. And once the veil starts to come loose, are you willing to walk down that path? Because I think God is on the other side of that path. The truth of the matter is, in truth, You know, they always say the truth will set you free. But in realizing the injustices that we've backed ourselves sometimes, I realize this, like we get taught things and then we defend it without really investigating it. And in investigating it, sometimes it may not be popular, but we got to say what the truth is. And honestly, right now, I have so much hope for the world right now because it's not just us. It's not just America. It's not just Palestine. It's not just Russia. It's not just Ukraine. It's the entire world right now where the indigenous voices are starting to be not only heard, but they're starting to be united globally. And I see that as an opportunity where pastors come forward and say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, folks. I might have been pushing something that wasn't God's will. Maybe you should search your heart and see where that is, you know? And I just want to thank you. Anyways, I'll let it on to.
Uh, Thank you so much, Pastor Moore. I was just, I'm grateful how you evolve, you know? Um, my daddy says the same thing, like you never stop learning. So, and as a matter of fact, the older you get, the wiser you get, the more willing you are to learn and to think critically, you know? But I think that depends on who you surround yourself with. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just like being planted in the right garden. You know what I'm saying? If you're not planted in the right garden, God bless certain flowers that just keep blooming. But, they're not gonna thrive. They're just gonna, kind of keep blooming and be that only flower in a field of like poor soil. So like when you and I think you're drawn to that. Some of us are drawn to the truth. You know when this is bullshit, you know what I'm saying? And then you gravitate toward what you know to be true. And then and you learn and you're willing, humble enough to let go of old ideas and say, wow, maybe this person is right. Maybe I need to just be silent and listen a little more, you know? And then once you learn, then you teach somebody else. You know what I'm saying? I love that. There was something you said also that their suffering was not part of the tour.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that. You know that, and also this is so random, but I grew up in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. And when I was growing up in the projects, Manhattan was called Fear City. And there was so much crime and poverty. And now New York City is forget about it now, right? So as I was growing up, it started to quote unquote gentrify, which was the real estate terminology was redlining. You know what I'm saying? The racial barrier was crystal clear. And now when you go back, nobody talks. So like you talk about land, colonizing land and pushing people out, like when I grew up, it was all like Black people, Puerto Ricans, and now all of those people that grew up in that area, where are they? You know what I mean? So when I go back to the Lower East Side of Manhattan, that's not home. That's not what I remember. What is this place with these people? You know what I mean? That continues to happen, just like you said,
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's not unlike the fact that the Palestinians cannot go to where they lived, to
Yeah.
their own
Yeah.
homes, to their own villages. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
And
Trump's co-signing that,
yeah,
talking
I
about
would
turning it into
say
the
that
Riviera.
in response to what Clint asked, I wonder sometimes too if the other people on the tour, what their thinking might be. I know that when we debriefed, I could hardly wait to ask the question after we went to the school. I could hardly wait to ask the question to to our hosts. Why did you not interview the Arab teachers at the school so that we could hear what they have to say. So I don't know. I couldn't say.
Good question. Bonnie?
Bonnie?
Oh, there we go. You said about going home and all that. There's always been, or not, I say always, as I was growing up, there's been the phrase, you can never go home again. And and I'm from a small town, and I wouldn't want to go back. I visited a few times, and it hasn't really changed that much. And if you weren't, if you had it really nice when you were home and all that, and that's fine. But if it's changed so much, you can't go back. Your home was a memory, is a memory. So I think, I think what I'm trying to say is there's been so much dis, disrespect and horror through the eons from on all sides from everybody that none of us can really go back home. We need to make our own home in our hearts and spread out from there or something like that because it's home is where the heart is anyway. That's another thing. But yeah, you can't. I'm sorry to hear about all this geographical stuff and the Palestines and all this and all these other wars and it's like I get all the need for a place to call home, call their own and stuff, but it's like home's your heart, and I it's sad.
Bonnie, I've been giving a lot of thought to this lately. Most of us do not know what it's like to be indigenous.
Yeah.
No,
And so
absolutely not.
the people the Chumash people who have been here thousands of years are not unlike Palestinians who for thousands of years have lived in that place and then it's been required that they leave. I think it's a very different thing when you are indigenous.
Yeah.
When you are Maori or Aboriginal, when you are indigenous, you have a recognition and appreciation for the land. It's like I heard someone observe as Israel was bombing Gaza, pointing out that proves that Israelis are not indigenous to the land because indigenous people never destroy their own land.
Yep.
They only develop it and they treat it honorably. And I think that's one reason that we as capitalists can be so destructive to our own environment because we're not indigenous to it. And so we don't have an appreciation and the capacity to really love the land and the earth and the trees and everything around us. We may think that we do, but we need to listen through the ears of indigenous people. They are our teachers.
Hey, what a great day there would be when, the Environmental Protection Agency was made up of only Native American tribes.
Yeah.
Only Native American tribes had the right and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, when will you see that? You know what I mean? Hopefully we could push for something like that. Put it out into the universe, manifest it into happening.
Yeah. It's a good idea. Thank you, Reverend, for putting, I was stumbling around, but thank you for that.
I'm glad you raised it so that we could mention that.
I see
And
the
I
wheels
wanna-
spinning.
Oh, I
How's
wanted
it-
to say something really quick. I'm sorry. I want to say something
Don't
really
be
quick.
sorry.
So think of it. Think about it like this, Miss Bonnie and everyone else, really. So we have all these rich folk who live in their, whether they be mini mansions or mansions, okay? And here, little old poor me goes to whichever one I choose to and tell them, you know what, get the fuck out because I'm living here now. This is mine. This is not yours. Okay. How would that take if we were to do that? If we were to just rise up and just go and say, you know what, pa fuera, out of there,
And then
You know?
Rosie, and then you
Rosie,
tell
that's
them,
not a bad
Rosie,
idea.
home is where the heart is. Don't worry about it.
Yes, exactly. Home is where the heart is. And right now my heart is going to be right here. Right. So scram, right? Exit, stage left. we don't stop to think about those realities. It's what you were sharing, Pastor Moore, about los indígenas, because when you are of the land, it is sacred, 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 sagrado, santo, sagrado. Everything, the breath that you take, that you breathe in, everything, the mountains, the ocean, all of the critters, everything. And yet that is not what is taking place. That's not what has taken place. It's all to the contrary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Rosie. Linnea, good morning.
Hi,
Thank
good
you.
morning. Yeah, it's hard for white people to conceptualize, I think, the meaning, the full depth of the meaning of what the land is to the indigenous people. And Pastor Moore, I think you recommended the Christian imagination early on when we first knew you. And he uses the word identity. It's the indigenous people's identity is they are one with the land that is their home. So what does that do to their identity when they're just cut off from it? It's unbelievably tragic. I know I went to Israel in 1973, and I got the whole David and Goliath narrative. And of course, Israel was David and the Arab nations were Goliath. But I think in retrospect, the only clue I had otherwise was seeing the Arab people on the periphery and going to the market in East Jerusalem and seeing the look in their eyes. Just looking into their eyes and seeing something I had never experienced myself projected on me as a white, giggly girl. And later, 2009 in Honduras, I saw the same thing in children's eyes on the street. I just wanted to comment on that.
Brigitte, I see you've unmuted. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Linnea.
I just wanted to say that I very strongly agree with what Pastor Moore said. But after I said that, I thought, well, there are examples of otherwise. I've been in resource management. That was my career. And I remember being really disappointed. The Quinault Nation, which is the indigenous tribes that are along the Pacific Ocean in Washington State. And some of them have absolutely raised as in cut down to the ground, some of the old growth forests that were along the coastlines in Washington State. And that just, it so bothered me because I was like, they know better, they love better. Why did they do this? And I don't know all the details. Perhaps there was, there's always stuff going on in the background you don't know about. But I remember seeing that. I've seen that all across the western end of British Columbia. I once took a flight in the 70s from Washington State to Alaska. And what I saw was horrifying. The whole western end of British Columbia, which is ginormous, by the way, it goes on for many, many hours of airplane flight. Just one hillside after the next was just cut to the ground. There were no trees left. And I know in that area specifically, I know that a lot of pulp companies probably took over the land from the indigenous people. But again, it's so sad to see that sort of thing happening and realized that, indigenous people, they were there. And, I don't know, again, the extenuating circumstances that led to some of these things. But, we also had a female, I don't remember her name now. She was she was appointed, I don't remember her name now. She was appointed as director of one of the natural resource agencies in the United States, and this was a while back, maybe 10 years ago or so or more, and I was disappointed that she wasn't able to do more for natural resources than she did. I was like, oh, good, somebody who loves the land.
I will say this, Brigitta and everybody, that I see very frequently Black folks doing things that are self-destructive. This is generally the consequence of living in a capitalist world
Yes.
and trying to survive.
Bingo. I was just going to say that.
Survive and do things that are destructive to yourself, to your environment. Not because you hate your environment or hate your world, you're just trying to live and trying to get ahead.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is part of the competition that is forced upon people. We're always being taught to get ahead. We're always being taught that, in order to get ahead, you have to be more financially successful, not in any other way. And I can see that people from all cultures,
Sure.
get sucked into that.
There, before we give it to Michael for communion, does anybody else have anything you want to share? Your response.
And I just want to echo what you're saying, to Brigitta, about the incredible effect of the trauma of occupation and colonizing on people of every tribe, nation, and culture. Because someone is Black or because someone is Native American doesn't necessarily mean they're not propagandized. Do you know what I mean? And so I think a lot, what I've experienced is some of the most harsh Cubans on Cuba are from Miami, and some of the really harshest people that, are very hard on children in preschools are that same culture.
Yeah.
I've just witnessed a lot of that in my life, that, maybe the need to fit in, or the need to be, like David's saying, part of what makes you successful. But it is difficult to see Indigenous people plowing trees, but for the same reason, David didn't know he was planting a pine tree on top of,
There you have it.
eradicated olives either, so
Exactly.
that I love you guys.
Diane, thank you
they're
so
not
much.
the cause.
Julius and Diane.
They're not the cause either. They are not the
Right.
cause.
Yeah.
That-
It is
Thank you.
learned freaking behavior by what has been inculcated.
Yes.
Inculcated. So
Yes.
let's not get this twisted. Let's
Yes.
not get this twisted, because it is not coming from, the depth of the hearts of the
Yes.
people of colors and indigenous. It is not. No,
Yes.
it is not.
Yes.
Thank you, Rosie. I see Brother Julius has his hand up, and Miss Diane, I see you raising your physical hand. Can we hear from Diane really quick before we hear from Brother Julius? Can you unmute, Diane?
Oh, you muted again.
One more time.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, I can be really quick. It seems to me that hearing you all what the way out is forward, not backward, not romanticizing, not saying this group, that group, or the other group. We all need each other together to move forward.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
And
All right, Julius, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody. I'll be brief. Thank you, Bonnie, for that question and the comment of home is where the heart is, because I think it helps us all kind of explore why it's important to think about and care about people that have been dispossessed, and some of the counter narratives that can develop. Well, why should it matter so much? Isn't it more important to just be preoccupied with wherever you are in the present, in the moment? And to an extent, it's true, but there's a lot of pain and suffering that comes with being detached from your land and your familiar surroundings. I can't say it better than Pastor Moore. Dr. Moore has already said, connecting the dots of Israel and the dispossession and the dehumanization there to contemporary United States with what's going on in the Caribbean, and what I think is going to start happening in the United States, which is, I've mentioned it before, drone strikes against dehumanized, marginalized people in the name of national security, anti-drug war, anti-gang war, and it's going to be the usual suspects who will be drone striked on American soil: poor people, brown people, black people, and people of European descent who stand with poor people, brown people, black people, and indigenous people. Now, it's important to know that, to Rosie's point, you don't come out of your mother's womb as a racist, as a anti-poor individual. These are ideologies that are inculcated into you as you are educated in a certain society, meaning that race is a social construct, and racism is also a social construct, and they are necessary because they do work. They help justify the dehumanization and the theft of land and labor from other human beings. They are a means of rationalizing evil.
Yeah.
And there are real material benefits to certain groups of people, usually a very small minority, to dispossessing large amounts of people of their land and their labor. Okay, so those are my thoughts.
That's testimony is what that is.
I love everybody with what they're putting in together, and you know, it's like this whitewashing. I call it whitewashing. I have a family. I mean, I look very Caucasian, right? But I'm going to tell you something. The reason I'm even in California is because my grandfather had to move to California after their farm was taken away because his mother, who was Comanche, in her will did not put the wording correctly, and so the land, which was oil land, was taken. So my grandfather and all of his family moved out here to California because the land, which was indigenous land, which was theirs, was taken. You know? So, but here's the funny part. Half of those people in my family who I've had to recently realize are racist ass MAGA people, God bless them, don't even realize where their roots are from because they're not willing to look at it in a realistic fashion. That's that honesty that Pastor Morse, that whole sermon was about honest reflection.
And how about my roots in Puerto Rico? We talk about Puerto Rico, which is a commonwealth of the United States. And suddenly, people are telling Puerto Ricans to go back where they came from. Seriously? Take it down. Take it down.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, look at everybody. Thank you, Julia and Clint, and everybody who's contributed. It's valuable to all of us. We've been given treasures here today, and Michael, who has had quite an experience this week, is going to conclude our time with communion.
Thank you. And this can be hard for me. I contacted Pastor last night because of an experience I had on Friday, and I've talked through Linnea and I, and we're debriefing since it happened. And actually, as always, Linnea has just been so much of a part of this as everything. And after I got home from this experience, well, first of all, I want to say this is technically a communion message. And when I was talking to Pastor last night, I said, yeah, I can do it as part of communion. I'm not sure how it connects to communion. And then I felt okay about it because I hope you can see what I can see, and that it is so much related to our celebration of communion, bringing us back in contact with each other, the solidarity between us and creation, and us and each other. But so that's what I want to talk to you about, and that's why this is so unconventional. I feel uncomfortable about it. But so I broke down 2 Sundays ago with grief. Matt invited us to express some grief, and Linnea and I have been part of Defensa since the spring. And it's been a big part of our lives. And I guess it just all culminated that morning. We've seen so many friends. First of all, let me say, Marcy, there you are. Marcy is a sister in this resistance movement. And Ana Rosa is the person who got us into this form of resistance. And I love you, sisters. So, what I want this whole thing to culminate in is the knowledge and the celebration of God's mysterious ways, of our Creator's mysterious ways, of our Creator being able to take different tragedies and different conflicts and synthesizing the experiences into something that honors Creator and honors love. And so that's where I'm going with this, and it's a little bit indirect. There's 2 or 3 disclaimers. Linnea always helps me. I talk way too long and she helps me to be succinct. And there's another way she helped me, and that's I want everybody to understand. Linnea said saw a communication. She witnessed communication between 2 of our Hispanic friends and me right after this happened, and she was concerned that I was viewing myself as a hero, and because I said there they were. There were 5 armed ICE agents, and there was just me. And she thought I was saying to them, gosh, I'm the hero. No, I was a coward. I was a coward in this whole experience. And I've relived this experience so many times. I've been awake all this, you know how you get when you're in these things. But so here, I went out on patrol Friday afternoon, and you're usually aware when Linnea and I are in the patrol hotline, the signal with our Defensa people, because that's one of the things that we do. And so you're all day long, you're hearing what's going on. Well, I went into Friday's patrol not knowing what had gone on the day before, because I took Thursday off. We don't take very many days off, but I had some appointments stuff. So we didn't patrol on Thursday. And that's part of the kind of the baseline. So I went into this kind of not knowing what's going on. The second thing is I'm trying to be succinct, and I haven't been, but I'm cutting out a lot of the details of the story. And if we're all together sometime, I can tell you some other things about it. But I want to front load two conflicting things that just were flashing with me as this was being played out. Remember when Gigi talked last week? Fantastic talk. And one of the takeaways was, Lynn and I have always felt it's our privilege to leverage our privilege. We have all this white privilege and it's awful. So if we can leverage that to help marginalized peoples, that's our obligation to do that. And remember, Gigi said, sometimes, I think she was talking to you, Scott, about nonviolence and violence. And she said, sometimes it's just necessary to put yourself between the oppressor and the victim. And that's been on my mind all week. And the other thing that's been on my mind since Lene and I, defense has changed so much in the spring, and different tactics and different roles and stuff. And toward late spring, we had decided the rapid response part that we were part of was morphing into a more aggressive patrolling and chasing. And we told them right off the bat, look at us. We're not chasers. And so the real heroes of Defensa right now are a cadre of mostly young women under 30, who get in their cars every day and chase ICE all over, up and down the coast, disrupting them. So the second thing I want to front load is this, that we promised when we transitioned into a role of being patrollers, my adult children were very concerned about our safety. And we promised them that we wouldn't do anything dangerous. And we've really kept that. We've kept that promise. And I'm basically a coward at heart. In the 60s, during the Vietnam War protests, I was right there yelling and chanting and everything until the cops came and said, this is an illegal assembly. If you leave now, you're okay. Well, I would get up and leave before they shot the tear gas. So I'm not a brave person at all. Okay. So we have Gigi's admonition about being there in the middle. We've got the promise to my kids that we wouldn't do anything dangerous. So those were in my mind when this thing happened. So I'm on patrol. I don't know what happened the day patrol, and pretty much our patrol area of Saticoy has been it's been spared, and we haven't had much problem out here with ICE. I just voluntarily, we live about 10, 12 minutes from the jail. The jail's a hotbed of problems. So we just included the jail as being part of our daily routine. And I've done this same drive-through of the significant part of the county center parking lot adjacent to the jail 25 times at least. I've found a few ICE cars and turned them in. I found some FBI cars and stuff, but I've never had any confrontations. And if I thought I was going to have a confrontation, we would have called in the chasers. But, so it was a routine day. And it's stupid to include my garb that day, but it gets to be very relevant when they tell you what happened. I'm a pretty nerdy guy, and I'm just almost 80 years old. So, it's pretty easy. When I'm out walking around, young people make fun of me a lot. And I can't blame them. I wear these, if I'm wearing shorts, I wear these compression stockings that old people sometimes have to wear. And I just look pretty nerdy. When we patrol, a lot of times we don't wear our Defensa shirts. Those are for other situations. So luckily I didn't have a Defensa shirt on. I had on my old grandfather's shirt that said "World's Best Grandpa." So here I am, a walking no threat to anybody, right? And that's the background. When you saw me break down 2 weeks ago, it was a culmination of just so much sorrow, but also so much hatred. I've carried so much hatred for ICE in my heart. And every time we talk here, or we talk at our other church, or we're reading Oswald Chambers, or Lene and I are pondering through what's going to go on next, I'm confronted with the fact that I hate these guys. I hate them. I hate them personally. I hate their organization. And I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to love our enemies. And it's been a struggle. So I'm on patrol. It doesn't look like anything's particularly going down at the jail, and I'm just about ready to pull out for the rest of the Saticoy patrol. And I get a signal message from our dispatcher in our signal, in our patrol signal saying, "Hey, Michael, if you're still there at the jail, can you hang around a little bit? We've had a hotline tip." Yeah, and that tip was about whenever the sheriff claims that they don't cooperate, they don't collaborate with ICE, which is complete bull. But they said we have a report that somebody's loved one is going to be discharged, and they're afraid that ICE is going to be there to get them, and they've done that. We've had several confrontations at the jail, so I just said, yeah, I'll stick around. And so as I was sticking around, I saw this guy. I was out of the car, kind of walking around the parking lot. I saw this guy, and boy, he looked icy. His car looked icy. I didn't have a chance to run the plates yet because it was happening real fast. So he got out of the car when I was walking around. And I found myself real close to him. So he looked exactly like an ICE agent, but he didn't have a mask on. And I was that close. I looked in his trunk. He looked icy, but no mask. And I looked, and he had camo stuff and vests and things, no gun, in his trunk. And so I thought, well, this could be the thing. So I started to follow him toward the jail, and I lost him. He disappeared. So I signaled back into the base group and said, I've lost this guy. I think I'm going to hang around here. So I sat at the steps. I don't know if most of you probably aren't familiar with the jail here, but the parking lot goes down, and there's a series of steps way below. So it's probably the jail and everything's probably 20 feet below the parking lot. So I walked down the steps. I looked around inside. I couldn't find him inside the lobby or the visitor center. So I just went outside, and I just sat on the steps waiting. And every 2 or 3 minutes, I go in and look around but I couldn't find the guy, right? So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, with my back to the parking lot, all of a sudden I hear some commotion, and 3 guys rush by me, and I'm looking, and they're all masked up. They're right next to me. They're all masked up, and one of them had, 2 of them just had, on the back of their vest just said police, and the one in the middle said HSI, which is Homeland Security Investigator. So as soon as they cleared the door, of course, I called for backup on the signal. I called for backup. I went in then and peered around, and they were just standing there, so the guy hadn't come in. So I went back out, waited a few, 1 minute, went back, did that 2 or 3 times. And then the 4th time, there they were surrounding, and there were 5 of them. Now only 3 had gone in, and Linnea and I pieced this together. Linnea found an Instagram of the thing later when we were home that one of our volunteers had shot. Anyway, on the VC Defense Instagram. But anyway, so there were 5 of them. So I went in, and I'm looking at them. And this is so crazy, but this one guy had 2 guns on. It was like I thought, what the crap? He had 2 pistols on, and I don't know why that shocked me. But anyway, so I'm staying away from him, and I look, and I said, okay, they've got this guy, and they're kind of wrestling around, but there's 5 guys around one. So I thought, okay, I remember what Gigi said. I was feeling very cowardly. I remember what we told our kids. We wouldn't do anything dangerous. So I was afraid. I was really afraid. But so I started walking toward them, and they all looked up at me, and they I just didn't know what to do. And there's no protocol, but most of the uncowardly people in Defensa would have confronted it. I've seen our people do it. They start cussing them out. They get right in their face. They flip them off. They insult them and everything. But I just instinctively, I'm not a confrontational guy. So I just said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they looked at me real funny. And they said, come on by. Because they were in the middle. See, like I came in the door. They're in the middle of the lobby. And around the corner is the visiting room. They said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to visit. And they said, well, come on through. I said, no, what are you doing? Are you hurting him? And then this one, the very evil one that Lynette and I played, he said, are you one of those, let me see what the word was, radical agitators? And I said, oh, I'm not an agitator. I took off my cap and I said, I'm an old grandpa. And he said, what are you doing here? And they said, just go on by. And I said, no, I'm afraid of you. You guys will hurt me. I don't know where this was coming from, but I knew I was trying to stall him because it had been a good 5 minutes or so, and I was expecting the backup to be there. So I just kept getting closer and closer, and this is where God just came and revealed himself, because I'm just hoping for time. And I was real nervous. And this one guy, it turned out about to be, as we pieced it together, Lynn and I pieced it together, this was Jelly Roll. This guy I'm going to tell you about. These are the nicknames that our defensive people have given these guys. Anyway, so I was pretty close to this one guy, and I was so nervous. I dropped my sunglasses. I had them up on top of my head, and I dropped them off, and the lens popped out. And so here's this group of 5 ice skates, and this one guy comes over, and he said, it's okay, we're not going to hurt you. And he picks up my glasses. This guy that I hate his guts, and he's the other. He picks up my glasses, and the sunglasses, they're cheap sunglasses. The lens had fallen out. And he says, here, I can fix it. This guy's doing this. And he tries to fix it, and he can't get it in. And of course, he keeps looking because the other guys are getting really pissed off and agitated because he's waiting there he's being nice to me. And so I was all nervous. And anyway, finally, he was still trying to fix him. He says, well, you can fix him. He says, go on in there to the waiting room. And so they started walking out. So I thought, okay, now this is good, because as soon as we close the door, all the backup's going to be there. So they take the guy out, and I'm right there behind him. And there's one person outside, and I'm not going to mention her name because if I don't want to compromise her, but it was one of our female. She weighs less than 100 pounds. She was there, and I don't know how she was projecting her voice, but they're walking out. She starts to do what we're all supposed to do, and that is tell the victim his rights. No ferme nada, don't sign anything, don't tell him, all 4 things, She's being very, very assertive, and they're still walking, and so she starts cussing him out and challenging him. I haven't done that. I've just been asking him, and I've been saying, why are you doing this? Can't you leave him alone? What's wrong with you for doing this? And she's there. This little 100 less than 100 pound lady is just cussing him out and giving him hell and stuff. And I'm looking for the rest of the volunteers, and nobody's there. So we get up to the car, and they're putting him into the car. And then one of our leadership, a very 250 pounds, 6'4" guy, comes up and puts his finger in their face and screams at them and stuff. Oh, and Linnea showed me this on the video later. I lost my train of thought, but the one the very evil one, not this sweet man that had been so nice to me, but the one that scared me, he turned around to our young woman, and he yelled at her, you shut the hell up, or you're impeding an arrest, and I'm going to arrest you. Something like that. It's on the video. And she just kept talking. And so our leader gets there, and suddenly I'm emboldened. So I start talking to this really evil one. He was the driver, and his eyes they were like the devil. And then they got in and drove away. And so we were debriefing and everything, and there was no point. I said to the leader, "Aren't you going to send the, the patrol, the chasers after?" He said, "No, they've got him." He said, "Don't worry. You did what you could. There were too many of them." So we debriefed and stuff, and it just kept, right from the get-go, it just kept dawning on me. This one guy, I hated all these people, and this guy was sweet. I loved this man, not the mean one, but the one who stopped and was answering my questions and picked up my glasses, and he did everything but pat me on the back. You don't worry, And so as I was driving back after patrol and talking through it, Linnea, it just kept on dawning on me. That's the Lord's answer to me, because I don't hate this guy. I'm not defending ICE. I can't stand ICE. One of those guys was very evil. 3 others were, whatever. But one of those guys who I had made into the other had shown me so much love. And every day that it's only been since Friday, but I've been trying to process all this, and I can't sleep. But I know, and so that's why I tried to let Pastor know last night. God showed up and showed me love. And he showed me that one of these guys was lovable. Anyway, it's important. And I don't hate that guy. I don't hate ICE anymore. So that's as we gather I'm sorry it took so long. I didn't mean, and I cut out a lot of it. But
Excuse me,
as we
Michael.
gather, what?
Michael, this is Julia. Do you mind if I respond to what you just said really
I don't mind
quickly?
at all. I love you, Julia.
It came to my mind, and I thought, if you were like the 100-pound young lady that was barking, that man would not have been kind to you the way he was. So you can't call yourself a coward, and you can't say that, I want to be like those who yell and bark. Those who yell and bark have their own place, yeah? And you with your grandpa shirt and your compression stockings, you know what I mean? Like everything happens at the right time. You know what I'm saying? It was God's will for you to be there, dressed the way you were, non-confrontational, and that's why your glasses fell on the floor, and that's why that ICE agent picked them up for you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, Julia. I got encouraged when I cleared the doors. And so when she was saying that, then I started asking more I was still shaky, but I was getting a little, just more impassioned about, why are you doing this? And one of them turned, not him, but one of them turned to me and said, "So you are one of them. You are one of them, aren't you?" And the old guy kind of looked at me sad, but when I said it was Jelly Roll, but it was still love. I'm praying for that guy because he has to do this, and I know there's a godly heart inside of him. I don't know. Thank you, Julia.
I think we're all grateful for your courage,
Yes.
Michael.
I wasn't encouraged.
It was
Yes, it
absolutely
was. Yep.
But
Yeah.
the main thing why I wanted to bring it and what it has to do with communion is that I think we can rejoice that Creator intervenes in mysterious ways. Creator was there, and Creator was in that guy's heart, and so that's what I'm celebrating today. If you guys want to do your communion now too. Thank you, and I apologize. I did not mean to take this much time. Thank you.
Don't apologize, Brother Michael. You did what you were supposed to do. You were at that place at the right time. And you know what? It's your love. You are the one who radiates that love. And you know what? that individual because of that love that you radiate, and you don't even know it. You don't even know it, but you just ooze love, you know, and it's contagious. And so that one guy, he grabbed onto it. And God bless you for saying, you know what? You're going to pray for him because that's what we're called to do.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you guys.